Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. Did you notice there were a lot less cookouts today? A lot less flags out today? A lot less fireworks out there today? Such a contrast between July 4th and July 5th, isn't it? I hope you all had a great July 4th. I ended up just staying at home. I was a little tired. I have to admit, got to the end of the day yesterday. Yesterday was a very interesting day. I wish I could tell you all about it, but I'm just going to leave that. It's just going to go into the vault to never come out again. And I was a little worn out, so, I just stayed home. I could see the fireworks going off through one of the windows of my place here in Madeira Beach. Could hear all the booms and crackles and everything. And me, I was sitting here with some fried chicken, watching a little James Bond. In fact, I pulled the DVD out of The Man with the Golden Gun, which I know a lot of James Bond aficionados don't care for that movie, whereas it's actually in my top 5. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's because of the song. I don't know. There's just something about it. It's just a little bit different than the rest of the James Bond movies. But I picked that one out. I just sat here, was messing around on my computer, eating some fried chicken and watching James Bond. That's what I did for July 4th. So the fried chicken, I guess that's a United States thing. Of course, James Bond is British. So I didn't go 100% American yesterday. I hope you'll forgive me. Also, we got another episode of America's Missing podcast done yesterday. I hope you'll check it out at Podomatic or iTunes. And before the next couple days are over, I will have posted it up on YouTube. Just have to put the video and pictures with it to put it up on YouTube, so you can look for it there. Great episode. Has already gotten a lot of downloads on iTunes and elsewhere. So Melissa and I, my co-host, are very excited about getting... what is that? That would be our 4th case in the bank. So excited we got that done. And I personally think they're getting better every week. We're getting better in our shtick, in our interaction, and I'm glad about that because it's turning out to be a very popular show. So let's get to this show. I had to wait to record this today because James Comey, the FBI director, came out and made his, I think it was about 15 minutes, a 15-minute speech regarding Hillary Clinton's emails and the security of them and whether they were hacked and were any top secrets revealed. And I don't always like to say I told you so, but in this case, I'm going to tell you I told you so. The longer he talked, the more I knew they're not going to do anything to her. They're not going to prosecute her. And that, in the end, that's what he said. Despite all that, it's all horrible, but the FBI director is not going to recommend criminal charges against Hillary Clinton or I guess anybody else. But he says is at the prosecutorial's discretion whether they want to do this or not. But his opinion is that, did I write it down? Did I write his exact words down? No reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. So I ask you, what are the odds of a prosecutor in the federal government bringing a case against Hillary Clinton or anybody else? I would have to say the chance is 0. But I've known this for a long time. I've been saying this probably since the problem started, but when it started getting heated up and the FBI got really, really involved, I still said, they're not going to do anything. And I know what other conservative media have told all of you. I know what you want to believe. I know you want to believe all the conspiracies. Of course, last week, Bill Clinton talking to Loretta Lynch, or was it the week before, kissing up to her regarding all of this, as the saying goes. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I just don't. And I can't help it that a bunch of conservatives out there who who just weren't thinking straight would mislead you like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize for them because I know that they're not going to apologize to any of you. They're going to blame it on the FBI and this and that. And the truth is this. There is no way that the FBI was going to get involved in a case that might decide who the President of the United States is during a nomination season. They might have done something against Richard Nixon when he was already president. And I think it helped in their case going back to 1972 through 74 that he was term limited so they could feel they could investigate a president. They could get involved in something like that and not worry about Nixon wanting to run for re-election in 1976. So that kind of made it easy on them. This was different, or this is different in the present tense. I know they went about all this investigation. I'm not going to say that every I was dotted, every T was crossed. I'm not going to say that there were some Democrats in this investigation that might have looked the other way here and looked the other way there, but I don't even think any of that matters. I think that the FBI understands, as well as I understand, that when you start doing something like this, when the Justice Department gets in the business of investigating somebody who is running for president, who is the presumed nominee of one of the main political parties in the United States, that I just don't believe they want to get involved in it. I know what you say, well, if it was a Republican, they'd do it. I'm not so sure. If it pops up, I'll let you know. To my knowledge, no Republican nominee running for president in modern history. And hey, you have to admit, some of those guys weren't perfect. I'm not saying they did what Hillary Clinton did. But everybody has secrets because everybody's just human. We make mistakes. And the FBI didn't go investigate any of them. Did they just let the process work its way out? You get to the election in November, somebody gets elected, somebody doesn't. But because I think that too many conservative media people out there on Red State Talk Radio and elsewhere need stuff to talk about, and they want to inflame you, and they want to mislead you, and I'm telling you, you don't want to hear this, but you've been misled on a bunch of things over the last 25 years. Promises that could never be kept. The one that pops into my mind first and foremost is what could be done in Congress with just 1/3, with the Republicans just controlling the House, and what could be done in the Senate, given that your average Republican legislator isn't that conservative, and then conservative media people want to continue to tell you over and over and over that they should be doing this and doing that. They're just misleading you. They have gotten your hopes up too high. And that is one of the main reasons I think that Donald Trump found the ability to work his way into the Republican Party. It's also the reason that a lot of those people who have misled you have jumped on his bandwagon. All right? Because misleading you before gets viewers, fires you all up that you want to listen. Whereas also getting on the Trump train with all his cultists seemingly will do anything that he says. It pays to kiss up to him as well. I don't know what to tell you. I may get elections wrong. I may have thought that John McCain had a chance to win it with 2008, which looking back now is completely insane. Looking back at 2012, I was fooled by the polls. Just like a lot of you were. Remember that site unskewedpolls.com? And it ended up that Mitt Romney lost about the way the polls said he was going to lose. Pretty close. And I might have gotten it wrong on Brexit, although I'm not alone in that. I'm in a large majority of that, of a lot of people who probably know more about British politics than I do. Probably a lot of people who wanted Brexit to happen but still predicted that it wouldn't. But I didn't get this wrong. And I think that's noteworthy. You got to give me a little credit there. I just am a complete cynic when it comes to all of this. And on top of it, I think that the other conservative people who you listen to have done you a disfavor. On top, misleading you in that it wasn't enough for them to say that Hillary Clinton made these mistakes and did this and did that. I saw it on my Twitter feed. I saw it on my Facebook feed. I saw it on some of the sites that I go to. It's not enough to say that. A lot of people just had to come out and call her a traitor, as if she wanted this to happen. I believe a lot of bad things about Hillary Clinton, okay? I think that she's just incompetent. See, this is one of those things going back to the first days of Barack Obama's administration with Rush Limbaugh saying that he hopes he fails. And then trying to figure out, is he just inept or is he trying to do this on purpose? I've always said it's a combination. You know, you're allowed to pick a little bit of both on this. And with Hillary Clinton, she's obviously manipulative, but on the other hand, she's also incompetent. Just like, guess who else? Donald Trump. He's manipulative and incompetent as well. The Trump people try to tell me that he's not, that he's competent and he never makes any mistakes, is hilarious to me. But from the beginning, I've told you, I know why this all happened. She was using the private server so she could talk to Sidney Blumenthal and nobody find out about it because Barack Obama explicitly told her, I don't want Sidney Blumenthal having anything to do with my administration, mainly because of what happened during the election, the nomination process on the Democrat side in 2008. That wasn't good enough for Hillary Clinton. Sidney Blumenthal is in the most inner circles in the Clinton dynasty. On top of that, she wanted to raise money for the Clinton Foundation while on the side taking money, and she knew she couldn't do that on a State Department server either. So this is why that was set up. Now, I know she set it up for nefarious reasons, and in that way, she's manipulative. But I can assure you that in no way did she think, and we all think, and the thing is, I could put myself in her position. It's part of the reason I think people identify with this scandal. But it's also the reason I think a lot of people give her a break on this scandal, in that we don't get up every day thinking that our email is going to be hacked. We know it happens. I'm going to say at least once a month, one of my friends on Facebook gets an account hacked, and suddenly all these weird messages start popping up that I know didn't come from that person. It's not like that person intended that to happen. But people figure out how to do this. They figure out a password. They figure out how to get past the security questions, like asking you what was your first dog's name. And they get in. But nobody gets up every day thinking about that. I know that Hillary Clinton should have, and all of her people should have. But I can understand if it wasn't a daily concern. And it was obvious to me that she caught him in this. I'm not saying that she's a technical dummy. I'm not saying she's a technological expert. She's probably somewhere in between, probably to the lower side of it, given her age. She's probably competent on a computer, but in a lot of things, she's probably like my parents who are in their 70s when it comes to computers. They can work them, but there are things that they don't know how to do. Sometimes they get fooled by pop-up ads. And the older you get in our population, I think the more likely that is to happen because those people have less experience dealing with computers. You know, it was really my generation, that first young generation that, had computers in schools, for example. I can remember being 1984 or something, and we had some computers in Leechburg High School. First time that ever happened. I don't know what they have today. So you put that all together, and I could see her being a person that is manipulative, but not understanding the ramifications of what she did. On top, first of all. Now, I know according to the law, that doesn't matter. If you have top secret material and you start spreading it around on non-secure servers, insecure servers, I sound like they're mental, non-secure servers, that's still against the law. However, then the political side of it comes in. Who is she? And I've told you, I just said this to you like a week ago. The best thing probably Hillary Clinton ever did in protecting herself against any charges was running for president. Now, I would say that if she was a senator from New York running again, or if she was just a representative of any state, I'd even go to the point of saying if she were running for governor of New York or governor of Arkansas or any other state that she could finagle her way into, that the FBI might take a different stance toward it. Okay? But not president of the United States. That's just, and that so many conservative people, media people who have more listeners than I do, don't tell you this stuff, upsets me. That is life. It's not fair. It's not right. But that is life. I'm not saying, as you know, I'm a cynic. I'm not saying that she should get away with this stuff. There was 15 minutes of James Comey, FBI director. That is C-O-M-E-Y. That is how you pronounce his name. There's still a lot to feast on in what he said, because basically he said that just the facts of the case that we have, as we know them out here, are true. But being that he believes that there was no intent for Hillary Clinton or any of her people for these secrets to get out, it was mistakes here, it was mistakes there. Do we really throw people in jail because of some unwilling mistakes? I know we do throw people in mistakes. Involuntary manslaughter, if we kill somebody by mistake, something like that. But what did I say? I'm going to go look. I have my notebook right here. I take a few notes on my show to do it. And last week, what day was it? Let's see if I can find it. Can't find it now. This is just something I'm doing off the top of my head. But I told you it was in with the last 2 weeks. I told you FBI is going to check into a few things. Did anybody die because of this email breach? Was anybody outed because of this email breach? Was anybody prosecuted because of this email breach? Like somebody got information and somebody else got in trouble. If all of those questions were no, then this was never going to happen. No matter what you may think about how just the fact that the email hacking and the way they were handling the emails themselves was against the law. I know what the law says. I know what the law says. And I know that we're supposed to follow the law, but once again, it comes back to who she is and what she's running for. And I don't mean her name Hillary Clinton. I mean she is the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And you do something like this, and even if the other person running, Donald Trump on the Republican side, is completely incompetent, which I believe he is, you're automatically throwing the election to the Republicans, and that's not something the FBI is going to do. I'd like to think that there are a few fair-minded people, because the FBI does do a lot of great work, that would know that that sets a dangerous precedent. Unfortunately, I think too many of you Trump supporters and Trump cultists have tried to get everybody excited about how, well, yeah, Donald Trump is behind right now, but you wait, those charges are going to come up against Hillary Clinton, and we're going to vault to the lead, and he's going to crush her. How's that working for you? I know as a conservative, I'm supposed to be outraged at the FBI. I'm supposed to say that the fix was in and all of that because of Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch and to be a Democrat and Barack Obama and all of that. And I just don't believe it. And it's not because I'm naive. The reason you think the way you do, I think, is you have been overpromised to. Got your hopes up. And this is why I've tried to tell you for too long that too many conservatives are being driven by hate against the other side. And hate gets in the way of your better judgment. Hate causes you to hope. And I've told you, you don't need hope, you don't need hate, you don't need love to defeat the enemy. All you need is a good plan. And guess what? That's the one thing Republicans don't have. The one thing that's most important is what they don't have. One more reason I don't respect Donald Trump, and one more reason I'm not a part of the Republican Party anymore. Speaking of which. But we got so caught up in this hatred of Hillary Clinton that you start hoping. You think we're going to get her eventually. We're going to charge those Clintons. We're going to throw them in jail eventually. And suddenly you become Ahab, going after the whale that damaged him, not realizing that your pursuit of that whale or her is destroying you in the process. And you, in Ahab's case, leading that ship that went after and getting a lot of other people in trouble as well. It's not worth it. The only thing that is worth it is defeating her at the ballot box, which is something it doesn't look like all of you are going to be able to do in November, mainly because you've gotten behind the wrong candidate. And why has Trump been so successful? Because he's like you. Not motivated by any sort of logic or good plan or anything, motivated by a personality cult that's based on hate and just outrage. And when it comes to the plan, well, he's going to do this. No, he's not going to do this. He's going to do this. No, he's not. Back and forth, back and forth. That is who you have pinned your hopes on. All because you needed to take somebody down that bad. And it just seemed to you that these other guys and woman, Carly Fiorina, weren't up to the task because you're so set on wanting to get behind somebody who acts as angry as you do. That's a mistake. That was a mistake. Too late now, I think. But I think, had it been a year ago, and more people listened to me and said that what we don't need to go after to beat Hillary Clinton next year is somebody who's angry and hateful. Instead, we just need a person, man or woman, with a good plan. That should be enough. We wouldn't be in this predicament right now where pretty much all the polls say that Hillary Clinton is going to win. So yes, once again, I told you so. But I think that you were factoring in that something was going to happen to Hillary Clinton regarding this email controversy, this email scandal. And you should have been smart enough to see that that wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. I'd also add that Hillary Clinton, I wouldn't say that she's done press conferences over this time, but she has done quite a few interviews regarding all of this. I've found her answers over the last year, however long it's been, to be outrageous. But it was enough. The problem is that, once again, every time that she would come out, you'd see on every conservative site out there, oh, she made this flip-flop this time, she made that flip-flop that time, on her emails and what happened and when it happened and why it happened. And I was always like, I just don't think that matters. I just don't think it matters. And what does matter is who's going to be president of the United States. I'm not even sure that this email issue, although, like I said, I think a lot of people can relate to it a lot more than they can relate to Benghazi. It's caused us to get away from the issues. This reminds me of going back to the birther controversy, headed up by Donald Trump, I might add. Back in 2009 through about 2012, all these people doing that research out there, wanting to prove that Barack Obama's from Indonesia and he's not an American citizen, and the birth certificate, all of the thousands and thousands of people that put thousands of man and woman hours into that, and it went nowhere. This is kind of like that. My attitude with all of this is that if you're going to put hundreds and thousands of hours of work and hoping and all this, you better get it right. You better do it. You better succeed. This better go somewhere. Charges better be brought, or I'm just not interested. You, in my opinion, will have failed. And that's what happened in the birth certificate controversy. That's what's happening in this email controversy. Now, in that case, FBI is the people doing the work. I think in the birther thing was just a bunch of regular people who knows where they've disappeared to now. They're probably a bunch of Trump supporters now. But because the FBI has a job to do, they did it, and now this is the conclusion. Can you live with it? I know what you're thinking. Well, if it would have been a Republican president and this happened and it was Mitt Romney and it was Mitt Romney's attorney general, then this wouldn't be what they did. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I don't think that a Republican president with a Republican attorney general, they'd look into it, and probably the statement that James Comey made today would have been the same from a Republican attorney general. Simply because the appearance of impropriety, the appearance of political meddling in the issues of an election. So you have to look at that too. If you're thinking that a Republican president would have caused this to be different, that James Comey would have come out today and said, yes, we're going to prosecute Hillary Clinton to the full extent of the law, not just her, but all of her assistants and all of these people, then you are dreaming. And that's why I've tried to tell all of you, we should just stick to conservatism. We're so worried about emails and birth certificates and assassination rumors and things. What gets put to the back burner? Actual political ideas. Actual conservative ideas that we should be hammering on Democrats and liberals from day to day to day. Next day, the day after that. Instead, we pin our hopes on the FBI doing the right thing, and we shouldn't have been doing that. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. It will be interesting to me to see what other conservatives have to say about what happened today regarding this FBI statement. They're going to be outraged. It's so predictable. It's funny. They're going to say that the fix was in and all of that. And I just want you to remember, I don't stand here thinking I can change your minds. I'm just giving you a different way to think about it. I think have you ever seen, it's on YouTube, and this has become kind of an important part of my life in the last few years, that there is a commencement speech done by an author. Forget his name right now, but if you go on YouTube, do a search for "This Is Water." It's a commencement speech by an author. He committed suicide a few years ago. But in there, he makes the point that not that there's not a right and a wrong, but there are certainly different ways to think about things. In that, he gives an example of somebody riding around at a big Hummer and guzzling all that gas, and a lot of people think that, well, that person doesn't care about the environment, and whereas it could be, on the other hand, as he points out, that the person was in a really bad car wreck when he or she was younger, and they're even terrified to be out on the street, but they have to drive to their job, so they buy the biggest vehicle that they can. There's two ways to look at that. Just like if you get caught off in traffic by someone and there's almost a wreck, you automatically think badly of that person. Oh, that person's such in a hurry, that person doesn't know how to drive. But for all you know, there's a little baby in that car, and the parent is trying to get that sick baby to the emergency room or something like that. But because we are so self-centered, we automatically think the worst, instead of thinking that there are other very realistic possibilities. This is kind of what's going on here with this email controversy. I know what she did was wrong. But there is another way to look at this that not resolves Hillary Clinton from what she said. And I don't believe that for a second. But you also have to look at it from the FBI's point of view. I know that they're supposed to enforce the law, but they just may think that getting involved in a presidential election is a bigger deal, is worse than not following the law. Just want you to think about that, but I would check that commencement speech out. This is Water. Very interesting. Let's move on. Yesterday when I was talking about the United States and its current situation compared to the 13 colonies separating from the King of England, and I said I don't know what we'd do today. It's very easy to visualize that if the United States was still part of England, that wouldn't want to separate even now either. You'd still probably find that 33% number that has been thrown around as how many colonists or percentage of colonists should separate from England back then. It was a horrible sentence. I forgot to bring up probably the most obvious version of this, and that is, of course, I talked about the federal government yesterday, but how about the UN? As an organization, you could argue that the UN is much worse than England was in the 1700s. Very, very, very easy to argue that and make points regarding that. But you know and I know that the United States is not going to leave the United Nations anytime too soon. In fact, the United Nations headquarters is on our property. It's within our airspace. If there was a war, we would have to defend those buildings just like we'd have to defend the rest of New York City. We've allowed dictators and killers and despots to fly into our airspace to speak there, to live there, to lie there, to mislead there. And still we're a part of it. And there is no elected official, Democrat or Republican, that is ever going to cause us to leave that organization, even though we should. We should leave it and kick it out into the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, you want some shovel-ready jobs for those people in New York City who are all worried about construction? How about we just start tearing down those buildings? There'd be a nice job for what, about 6 months? How long would that take? 6 months, a year? There's a shovel-ready job. But we're not going to do that. Even though the UN is worse probably than England was back in 1776, we have changed. Evil remains the same. We have changed. The Founding Fathers would have never wanted us to be a part of an organization like the United Nations. And I know it was set up for all the best of reasons after World War II. Yeah, I know. But it sucks now. That's all that matters. And it's safe to say without the United States being involved in the United Nations, it wouldn't even exist. And I'm not sure that it has prevented one war, one skirmish at all. Hasn't stopped all the fighting between the Israelis and the Arabs. Didn't stop Korea, didn't stop Vietnam, didn't stop the Iraq wars, doesn't stop terrorism. Why does it exist? Who the heck knows? But that's why it was originally created. They put Cuba and Saudi Arabia and all these other kinds of nations on the civil rights councils, heading them up. That's hilarious. A lot of irony there, and we're still a part of it. And as I stated yesterday, the 13 colonies drew up their Declaration of Independence for much lesser reasons than we would have today to separate ourselves from the United Nations. The 13 colonies probably had a lot less to complain about in 1776 than the average American does about the federal government today, but we just continue to let it happen. And once again, big government doesn't change. It's bad everywhere that it is. We have changed. We are not the same people that we were in the 1700s. We unfortunately have started to accept, and it's been going on for a long time, evil, what should I call it? Everyday evil. It's just a way of life now. This is what upsets me so much about the presidential election here in the United States. I'm expected to accept one or the other, even though both are bad. The Founding Fathers have never gone for that. Never. But I think that this is why it's happened, because we've changed. And that's why I continue to say that it's going to get worse in the United States before it gets better. And I think it will get better. It's just like ripping that Band-Aid off. You do it slowly, it's going to hurt little by little by little over the course of 5 or 10 minutes, and it's almost like torture. Whereas if you just rip the dang thing off, it's going to really hurt for just a few seconds. We need to rip the Band-Aid off, because what we're going through right now is torture. If, what is the saying? If things can't continue, they won't. Because we can't continue what we do. I'm not saying that it's all going to fall apart tomorrow or next week or next year, anything like that. But it just can't continue. It may not be in my lifetime, but it can't continue. The way we do things in the United States, and deficits, and regulation, and taxes, and immigration, and going down to the simplest things like whether we should have 2 bathrooms or should be unisex bathrooms, it just can't continue. Eventually, enough people's good graces, goodwill will be used up, and then it's going to be really ugly. It's going to be really ugly. But we can't even separate from the United Nations, and we celebrate our Declaration of Independence yesterday. And there's no doubt it's a noteworthy day. It's a big day. It's probably one of the best days in the history of humans. Probably. But what counts is what we're doing today. And unfortunately, those same people that were having those cookouts and shooting off the fireworks and going to the beach and drinking beers, you know what? They love big government. And too many of them love the United Nations. And too many of them love what the government gives them. And they love that certain people's rights are being infringed. They love it all. But they'll celebrate July 4th. So you think about that. Let's move on to some newer business, just to maybe to lighten things up a little bit. I think we need to lighten it up. I saw this story. It's at freebeacon.com, Washington Free Beacon, but it's freebeacon.com. And I think it goes by WFB some places as well. There's a story coming out of New Orleans, if you want to New Orleans, look at me in my East Coast accent. If you live there, it's New Orleans, and I'm not going to pronounce it like that. Strippers there are in an outrage. And, of course, any story that talks about strippers being outraged is going to get my attention. Maybe that's just the Las Vegas in me coming out, being that I used to live there. Well, as you would expect, New Orleans is run by a bunch of Democrats, like most United States cities, big cities are. And here the Democrats there want to have the strip clubs, I should say, cut in half the amount of strip clubs that are in that city, because they say that strip clubs cause crime. Now, I'm going to remind you, these are Democrats that want to do this. These aren't Republicans. These aren't Bible beaters. They're not holy rollers. They're not Mormons. They're not nuns. They're not pastors. They're not Joel Osteen. These are liberal Democrats who want to infringe on the rights of these women to dance and take their clothes off. Now, first thing I hear when I read this story is, where's Bill Clinton? Surely he would not go for something like this. Where is he? I know he's probably with his wife somewhere helping her campaign. He should take one of his private jets down there, land in New Orleans, and go to that council meeting and set those Democrats straight. I mean, if you can't have strip clubs in New Orleans, where can you have them? But they're saying that will cut down the crime. And hey, we all know that there are shady things that go on in strip clubs. We know that. There is probably too close of a connection between exotic dancing, prostitution, and drugs, and pimps. It's all like in this one criminal circle over there. Just like you could equate crystal meth production with stealing and mental incapacity, something like that. It's just not one crime. It's a bunch of crimes related to each other. But what I read regarding this is, aren't they really just using the strip clubs as a scapegoat? I don't even know what the crime rate is in New Orleans. I'm going to say it's not very good. I'm going to say probably it's one of the higher places for crimes, specifically murder. Only because I've read somewhere that, and this might have been around Hurricane Katrina time, that New Orleans was the most corrupt city in the United States. I think Las Vegas was number 2. You never know that living in Las Vegas, though. Las Vegas, if you don't know, is a fairly safe city. Fairly safe, considering the gambling and strip clubs and everything else you have in that city, all the cash flowing. But what I read is the Democrats here are trying to scapegoat the crime, or they're using the strip clubs as a scapegoat. Was we really know that the reason there's so much crime in New Orleans is because Democrats exacerbate crime. And in fact, you could say that as much crime happens in Democrat areas in the United States, the Democrats actually like crime. You could say, being that it never seems to go down that much. Whereas you look at Republican areas of the United States, and that's where all the guns are, by the way, and those places are a lot safer. And I'm going to guess there's at least probably a few strip clubs in the red counties and red states in the United States as well. But no, the Democrats, they talk about free love, and people can do anything they want with their bodies that they want. They want to take drugs, they want to do this, they want to do that. It's all fine to them. But when it comes down to them trying to control a crime problem that they started, guess what they're going to go in on? The strippers. And this is why I've tried to tell any of you liberals or Democrats who might run across this show, is that we, the Republicans or conservatives, being that I'm not a part of the Republican Party anymore, we as conservatives are not coming after you. I know that's what you've been told. And I know you might be able to pick out a certain incident here, a certain incident there. But when it comes to wide-ranging, with a lot of coverage, a very big umbrella of what the Democrats want to do with something, it's amazing how quick they are to do it. Democrats don't do anything little. They do everything big. In this case, I would say if there are some strip clubs in New Orleans that are a problem, then you shut them down. You take away their licenses. If these legitimate businesses are causing crime, then you shut them all down. If they're really that bad, but in this case, they just want to take away half of them, and it seems indiscriminately. I would probably say that these strip clubs are probably crime sources, but the issue in New Orleans, I'm going to guess, is just because there's a lack of law. A lack of just enforcing the laws that are on the books. Because why? Probably because New Orleans isn't allowed to profile. They have to let these people go because they're a part of this minority. They have to let those people go because they're that minority. We don't want to be seen as racists and bigots and everything. And that's why crime continues in New Orleans. Just the same reason that crime continues in any of these cities in the United States. The Democrats have compassion, and they identify with the criminals. That's why it continues. Not because of strip clubs. So, all you liberals, I want you to take a long look at this story. A long, long look. And like I said, how can't you? And there's a video that they had a council meeting in New Orleans, and all these strippers showed up. And of course, I had to play the video. I mean, if you're going to put strippers in a video at a city council meeting, I mean, you just got to watch that. That's must-see TV right there. And they got statements in this article at the Free Beacon about these strippers, what they think of this, and they're all outraged about this. And they're all saying, yeah, I'm making money and I'm going to go to law school. They got those stories down pretty pat. That they're telling the same stories to this reporter that they're telling to the men at the strip club. Yeah, thank you for that tip. It's going to help me go to law school. How many strippers really end up going to law school? Not as many as probably say they're going to. That's what I know for sure. Yeah, I'm stripping because I want to become a surgeon. Okay. Hey, I have nothing against stripping. I lived in Las Vegas for 13 and a half years. The only reason I was ever in strip clubs was because I was part of a couple music video productions that shot inside strip clubs. Not because I'm a bigot or I'm a prude or anything like that. I worked with beautiful women every day in entertainment. I didn't need to go to strip clubs. So, just kind of a funny story. I would urge you to check that out at the Washington Free Beacon. One more thing before I go. There was an article also at the Free Beacon, coincidentally, having to do with June gun sales. There were more guns sold in the month of June than in any other June in the history of the world. Gun sales continue to go up month after month after month. However, there is a poll out there, and I don't know if I wrote down where the poll that was done. Didn't write down who did it. Saying that more than a less percentage of the people own guns than has ever been the case as well. Meaning, the people who are buying guns now are already gun owners. Now, this flies in the face of a lot of stories that I've told you about in the last 6 months, specifically regarding women who are going to buy guns for the first time. And as you know, a majority of women are liberals, and I've said that's one of the reasons that I don't see gun rights going anywhere in the United States, because a lot of liberals own guns. And I think once you start analyzing that statement, you understand why it seems like gun ownership has gone down when maybe it hasn't. I happen to believe two things are going on here with the poll. And if you just want to get to the numbers. Allegedly in 1977, I would have been 7 years old, 50% of people own guns. In 2014, a couple years old, only 31% of Americans now own guns. So how could it be that gun sales have been through the roof during Barack Obama's administration, and then at the same time gun ownership go down? Well, I think it's partly two things. First of all, gun ownership has been demonized a lot more these days than it was in 1977. And I realize gun laws have changed in the United States for the better and the worse since then. But the demonization of it by media, liberals are a lot more outspoken about hating guns now than they were in the 1970s. I think that's part of it. But I also believe that there are a lot of liberals who own guns and don't want to tell anybody either, because then they feel like hypocrites. I believe a lot of that is going on as well. That they want to be known as good environmentalists, and they're pro-choice, and they're for a higher minimum wage, and they love the UN. They thought that going into Iraq was a mistake. They think that George W. Bush knew about 9/11, but you know what? They're a gun owner, and they don't want anybody to know, because they know that flies in the face of all this other stuff. I believe so. I don't think it's just conservatives who, when they're polled, are keeping their mouth shut because of a fear of the government tracking them down because they have guns. And we know that, for example, doctors now ask patients, do you have a gun in the house, as if it's a doctor's, as if doctors should ever even be concerned about that. It teaches people to keep their mouth shut. And I think that's what a lot of conservatives are doing. But I also think a lot of liberals are keeping their mouths shut too. But I got to go. You can find my show in its MP3 podcast form at YouTube, Soundbean, SoundCloud, Podbean, Podomatic. Find me at Facebook. Find me at LinkedIn. Email me, edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain. My other show, America's Missing Podcast, with my co-host, Melissa Bridges. Urge you to check that out, Podomatic and iTunes. Very, very popular show. Really proud of it. Got anything else? Oh, you can find my books at Amazon.com again now, so just do a search for my name there, and that's about it. Thank you for listening tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.